Persian Gulf woke up to new tensions. And on this April 20th, 2026, the Iranian regime is seeing pressure from the United States move from the symbolic level to the realm of covert war against its command structure. At the same time, suspicion has grown that the war is no longer being fought. Not only on the surface, but also underwater, where routes, mines, sensors, and cables that support strategic communications are located. What happened objectively was the following. United States forces intercepted Tosca when the ship was heading to Bandar Abbas. According to United States Central Command, the cargo ship ignored warnings for about 6 hours. It was hit in the engine room by the destroyer USS Spruance and then boarded by Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. The American version claims that the vessel was violating the blockade and that the material on board may include dual-use items, that is, goods that can serve both industry and Iran's military apparatus. For Tehran, this was treated as piracy. For Washington, it was a demonstration of control at sea. That's where the explosive detail comes in. The regime starts to consider the possibility that other parts of its machinery may also be vulnerable. And that includes communications, sensors, supply routes, and underwater infrastructure. We're seeing a scenario of blockade, ship seizure, mine clearing, and an all-out pressure campaign being reported by all mainstream media. And we're seeing a serious, credible suspicion circulate within this logic of confrontation that Iranian undersea cables are being cut directly from the seabed. The hypothesis is frightening because the whole world already understands that undersea infrastructure has become a strategic target. NATO itself reinforced the protection of cables and pipelines after a series of incidents in the Baltic. And Mark Rutte reminded us that more than 95% of global internet traffic depends on undersea cables that also support trillions of dollars in transactions every day. In 2025, Finland even seized a ship suspected of sabotaging a cable between Helsinki and Estonia. In the Red Sea, cable cuts also had a real impact on connectivity in parts of Asia and the Middle East. In other words, talking about a war against cables is no longer a fantasy. It's a real threat in the modern strategic environment. In the Iranian case, the fear is growing because the theater of this crisis is one of the most sensitive areas on the planet. The Strait of Hormuz is a hub for energy flows, trade, and military surveillance. Reuters reported that after the incident, the tension around the Tosca and the Iranian warning shots, only 3 vessels crossed the strait in 12 hours, far below the average of about 130 per day. War insurance rose again, reaching about 3% of the ship's value, and oil prices surged by nearly 5%. This shows how any silent blow, real or suspected, already has an immediate effect. When the environment reaches this level of tension, the mere possibility of losing communication or suffering tactical blindness is enough to spread fear within the chain of command. Reuters detailed that the United States has already begun efforts to clear mines in Hormuz using drones, robots, helicopters, and other means. Precisely because war at sea does not depend only on major battles, but on neutralizing covert threats and clearing the way for control of the route. And why can this turn into panic? Because pressured regimes react worse when they feel they are losing predictability. The Swedish Security Authority even said in March that history shows how a desperate and pressured regime can become even more dangerous. This point helps to understand Iran's current situation. If the regime realizes that it no longer controls the sea as before, that its ships can be stopped, that its mines are being hunted, that mines are being hunted, the Navy has become a central topic in major military alliances. The internal feeling is no longer just one of confrontation, but of being surrounded. And a siege in wartime politics usually leads to miscalculation, radicalization, and nervousness. There is still another decisive point. The European Union is already moving to expand sanctions against those responsible for blocking freedom of navigation in Hormuz. This means that the Iranian regime is not facing this alone. It also faces the risk of broader isolation, with other nations aligning to punish any actor involved in disrupting the route. When this diplomatic advance is combined with the American military blockade, the result is simultaneous pressure on three fronts: economic, maritime, and psychological. And that's precisely why the narrative of a possible covert attack on Iranian communications gains traction. In such an environment, every scenario becomes suspicious, every silence becomes a signal, every delay fuels fears of infiltration. Therefore, these events point to something bigger than an isolated action. It points to the idea that the Iranian regime no longer fears only missiles or visible blockades. It fears the invisible. It fears the war that doesn't appear in public footage. It fears losing control without realizing the exact moment of the rupture. It fears discovering too late that American superiority is not only in ships and planes, but also in the ability to choke off routes, track cargo, and neutralize underwater threats, and to impose a strain that gradually erodes the confidence of the Iranian leadership. In the end, the United States showed that they can stop ships, sustain a blockade, expand the search for contraband, clear mines, and keep the strait directly contested. Iran responded with threats, rhetoric, and the overall picture indicates increasing strain. And this is the point where the Ayatollahs may even deny being afraid, but the situation shows a regime under extreme pressure, surrounded from the outside and restless on the inside.